Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash DIY and Decor. My name's Ashley, and today I'm bringing you 10 brand new, dark, and spooky Witch Apothecary DIYs. Then at the end, I'm going to show you how I decorated my apothecary to see how it all came together. So stay tuned. A huge thanks to Labona for sponsoring today's video. More on them in just a little bit. First, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Coming into spooky season, I have so many fun ideas for DIYs and I can't wait to share them. So first, I wanted to give you an overview of what my apothecary looked like last year. I actually set it up this year and then decided I kind of wanted to go a little darker, moodier, just more natural, more realistic. I kind of wanted to get rid of the bright colors, so that inspired today's whole video. So let's jump into these bewitching DIYs. So of course the most obvious thing that all witches have in their apothecary are potion bottles. Now I know that there are several videos on how to create potion bottles, so I'm going to quickly go through this, but I'm going to show you how I did mine. Now a lot of these bottles came from the Dollar Tree, such as these black and amber bottles. Now, these glass bottles also came from the Dollar Tree in a 2-pack, and then the glass amber bottles actually came from Hobby Lobby, but everything else came right from the Dollar Tree. Now, a lot of the products that I will be using today, I am actually reusing, such as these little ones. Those were in my old apothecary. Now, to create my potion bottles, I just simply Googled potion bottle labels and just printed some out. Now, I have 2 different packs here, and I just did them in different sizes because I wasn't sure what size I would need, and these were just some free printables. If I can find the link, I will go ahead and link it down below, but it was so easy just to download these and then print them off on my regular printer, and honestly, we're going to transform them so they're going to look even spookier. So all I did was go ahead and cut them out and then just take my time matching the label to the perfect bottle. So like I said, I am trying to reuse things that I already had, and 2 of the things are these potion bottles that had water and food coloring in them. So I decided that I would go ahead and pour out the water, and I was not planning on reusing it, but when I mixed these 2, they created a really dark color, so you'll see I end up putting them back. So to go ahead and put my labels on, I'm just going to simply put Mod Podge on the back of my labels and glue them to the front of my bottles. And it is as easy as that. Now, I'm not going to go through and fill all of my bottles with different things. I just don't think it's necessary. So some of the bottles will have things in it, and some of them, actually most of them, will not. Now, to make sure that the label was securely glued on, I went ahead and took some Mod Podge and went over the front of the label too. Now, I didn't want you to be able to see the Mod Podge on the bottle, so I just took a baby wipe and just kind of wiped it off, so that way it cleaned it up a little bit. And then I just repeated this step for all my potion bottles. Now, here's where I decided to go ahead and use the food coloring and the water mixture in the 2 bottles that I poured them from. So I just simply went ahead and poured them back in. Now, I decided to go ahead and hot glue my little caps in there because, you know, kids. I wanted to make sure we don't end up with any spills. Now, to create that old, messy, spooky, creepy look, I went ahead and took my Waverly Antique Wax and a paper towel, and I am simply just dipping my paper towel into, you can see I'm pouring it into the lid, and then I am just dabbing it all over my bottles. And I did this for all of my bottles. I even went over the labels to create that old vintage look as well. And now my antique wax is kind of thick. It's a little dried up because I don't use it as quickly as I need to. So it actually helped with this because it kind of looked like mud or dirt was on my bottles, and that kind of what I was going for. Look how cool this looks. It's just so foggy and creepy and spooky and old. So I went ahead and did this for all of my bottles. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you're new, thank you so much for stopping by today. I really hope you love what you see. But just shortly to introduce myself, my name's Ashley and I love crafting. I love all things home and decor. So if you love all those things too, you're definitely in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I would love for you to be part of the channel, and hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. I have a bunch of fun ideas coming into spooky season, and then we're heading into the holidays. So definitely stay tuned for all of that fun content coming your way. So leave a comment, let me know, have you started decorating for Halloween yet? I started decorating, and as you're going to see at the end of this video, you'll get to see my witchy apothecary, and I can't wait to show you. These bottles were also bottles that I had from my current apothecary. So this is just glitter glue. So I just went ahead and took a baby wipe and just honestly a pair of scissors and just tried to get all of that glitter glue out. It didn't really stick to the bottle per se. It was just kind of chunky. So once I emptied those bottles the best I could, I just continued to take my paper towel and the Waverly Antique Wax and dirty these bottles up as well. And then you're going to see the skinnier, smaller bottles. They have loose glitter in them. So I went ahead and dumped out the glitter and did the same thing. Now for this jar right here, and this did come from the Dollar Tree, we actually are going to fill it. So all I simply did was took some stuffing out of an old pillow, but you can also use spider webs. In fact, that's what I was looking for, and I couldn't find any, but I did come across this stuffing. So I just decided to use that. And to kind of make it old and dingy, I just took a paintbrush, dipped it into my antique wax, and just dabbed it all over the stuffing. I just thought that it created a spookier look. And then all I'm going to do is simply put that in my jar. And then I have this big spider off of a floral pick from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to stick that in my jar. And then I have this pack of spider rings from the Dollar Tree. So I'm just going to take one. Now I don't want it to be colored. So I'm simply just going to paint over the gem part with some black paint, cut off the ring part of the spider, and then just stick it in my jar. And it was so easy. This DIY took minutes to make and created such a cool effect. Now for the two smaller jars, I thought that this would be perfect for some herbs. So all I'm going to do is take this pack of, I don't even know what it is, just green moss, I guess. And I'm simply just going to stick the moss down in the jars. Now, one of the jars I filled up completely. The other one I filled about halfway. And that's it to these jars. These were so easy to make too. And keep in mind, I'm using things that I already had in my stash to create these potion bottles. So you can use anything. Just get creative. So after all of my potion bottles are complete, it's time to move on to some spooky spell books. But first, I want to talk to you about LADYBUG furniture, and I am so excited to share it with you. And a big thanks to them for sending me some beautiful bar stools. I was really in the market for some new bar stools because the ones that I have, they are swivel, and with 2 kids, it's just a game for them and they needed to go. Plus they had fabric on the seats, and again, with kids, it's just not a good mix. So I was really looking for a bar stool that was not a swivel and could easily be wiped off and there's messes. So I want to show you how pretty these are. Here is their website. They have a variety of different furniture. Here are the bar stools that I decided to go with. I thought that these were absolutely perfect for my island. Now, I decided to go with 2 because when we had 3 bar stools, it was a little tight. Plus, we realized we never really used the 3rd one. Look how pretty these are. And they're so just very chic and modern, and they aren't so fancy, and they're perfect for a kitchen. They were so simple to put together, and the set included everything you needed to build them. They are comfortable, and look how perfect they are for my island. The colors match perfectly with my kitchen. They are durable, which is very important, especially when you have kids, because you really want to invest in pieces that are going to last a long time. I really love the low backs because when I had the other bar stools, they were really high and they kind of blocked the view of the kitchen. I just love these. So if you are interested in checking out LADYBUG furniture, I highly recommend. They are giving us a code to use, and I will have the link to their website in my description box below. Thank you again to LADYBUG for sponsoring today's video. All right, it's time to jump back into these bewitching DIYs. Oh, I actually thrifted these books. I found a great thrift shop near me that I really hadn't been to, and I'm telling you, it is going to be my new place to go. So I found these books, and I thought that these were perfect, but they're a little too clean. So again, I'm just going to take my paper towel and my Waverly Antique Wax and just dab, dab, dab all over the books. I am going to go around the pages, and then I'm going to dab on the binding itself, and look how dirty it made these books. I just love the effect that it gave. Now, for this hardcover book, I was going to do the same thing, and you can see that I started, but then I was thinking, what if I actually turn this into a spell book? So I went on Google again and printed out these 2 pages, and I sized them to my book. Again, if I can find the link, I will go ahead and link it down below, but this was found just through simple Google image search. So as you can see, they are the perfect size to cover the wording in my book. But again, we need to make it old and dirty and spooky. So I decided to go ahead and crinkle up my pages. And then by using Mod Podge, I'm going to glue each page down inside my book. Now, when doing this, I did learn that I had to put a thick layer on my pages because I did, crinkle the new pages. And so I needed it to stick down because now it was kind of sticking up, if that makes sense. So I did make sure to put a nice thick layer over the original pages. And then I just carefully pushed it down without pushing out the creases and the wrinkles. Now, if I were to do this over again, I actually think that I would rip the sides of the paper because I think that it would blend in better with the book and make it not so obvious that, that's a paper on top. Now, you're going to see that we're going to, do the whole Waverly Wax paper towel thing coming up. So it does help it blend, but I just think that it would be better if I ripped the sides. So that's something that you might want to keep in mind too. Then I lightly went over the edges and the sides of the new pages with my Mod Podge just to at least make sure that those were properly glued down and that it was going to stay down. Now it's time to make this look dirty and old, so I just took a paper towel, and just as I've been doing on all these projects, I've been just dipping it in my antique wax and dabbing it all over my book. Now I am going a little bit on the pages as well, the images, but I'm careful not to swipe because I don't want to smear the ink, although it should have been pretty dry by now, but I just didn't want to take any chances. But look how much better this looks. It looks so much more aged and old. And then I definitely made sure to go over the actual pages of the book as well. Now, I didn't like that you could see the red part of the book, so I went ahead and just painted the edges and the sides too where any of that red was showing. That way, you know, it made it more dark and spooky. Look at this spell book. This has got to be one of my favorites from today's video. All right, now we're going to move on to this other book that I have. It's the same one as the spell book that I just made, but I thought I would try a different technique on this. So the first thing I'm going to do is paint the entire book, and I was just going to paint the red part, then I just decided to do the whole thing. So I'm going to paint the front, the binding, and these edges of the book as well. Now I am going to open it and also paint the red part because not really going with my vibe. So once my paint was dry, I took a little bit of this white creepy cloth and I spread it out all over the top of my book because what we're going to do is Mod Podge it on. So I put a nice thick layer of Mod Podge on the top of my book and then spread out the creepy cloth. And then I completely let it dry. Now, once my creepy cloth was dry, I went over it with another thick layer of Mod Podge. I want this to be completely stiff and hardened and look like it's part of the book. So I did want to make sure to put a nice thick layer of Mod Podge down to make sure it is adhered completely. After that was completely dry, I took more black paint and just simply painted over my creepy cloth. Now, I did decide that I wanted to add more creepy cloth to the side of the book because in my display, I want to display it so the side is facing out. So obviously I want you to be able to see that cool texture there. So I just simply added some Mod Podge, added another piece of the creepy cloth, let it completely dry and harden, and then painted over it with the black paint. Now, when that was dry, I again took my paper towel and dabbed it in some Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm going to go ahead and distress the pages to make it look, you know, dark and moody and old and vintage, all the things. Now, in my last video, if you watched it, you saw that I was obsessed with the Rub and Buff Silver Leaf, and I used it on everything. I highly recommend you check out that last video because those DIYs were awesome. If I do say so myself, they were so cool. But this video, I wanted to try the Rub and Buff in Antique Gold. I just thought that that color would go really well with my theme. And look how cool this is. I just took my finger and I just rubbed the Rub and Buff all over my book, and that really helped to bring out the texture, and it really gave it a high-end look. So I was really happy with the results of this Antique Gold Rub and Buff. I'm telling you, if you have not tried any of the Rub and Buffs, I suggest you do. I think that it just really elevates your DIYs, and makes them look so high end. So after I was done with the rub and buff, I just took my paper towel with the Waverly Antique Wax and just kind of dabbed it all over the book, just, kind of make it dirty. And that was it to this spell book, and I love how it came out. It was super easy and fun to make too. All right, for my next DIY, I am starting off with this jar from the Dollar Tree, and the first thing I'm going to do is paint the lid black. Now, you could definitely spray paint it, but I just decided to go ahead and paint it. I already had my paints out. Next, I'm going to take these little 3D kind of like dots, and I'm just going to place them all around the side of my lid. I'm going to do this to add some dimension and texture, and then once I have them all placed, I'm going to take my black paint and give this whole thing a second coat. Next, I'm going to take this styrofoam skull that I had in my stash, and I'm simply going to hot glue him to the top, and then I'm going to paint him with my black paint as well. I thought that this added a cool detail. Now, you can also use the skull, like the skulls that are in the bag of skulls from the Dollar Tree. That's actually what I wanted to use, but I didn't have any. But I did have the styrofoam one, and it worked out perfectly fine. Next, I'm going to take that antique gold rub and buff again, and I am going to dot it all over my skull and the lid, and especially focusing on the pop-up dots that I put around the lid, so that way it would highlight them more. Look how neat this lid came out. I just think it's so fun, and that styrofoam really added a cool texture too. So now we're going to work on the glass itself, and again, I'm simply just going to take my paper towel, dab it in the wax, and then dab it all over my jar. Now, this is actually a two-part DIY. So the jar itself is the first part, and now we're going to start the second part. So I'm going to take this scrapbook paper that I actually had in my stash, and I am going to cut it in a couple different pieces. We are going to create scrolls to go inside the jar, just like they are a scroll of spells. Now, what I decided to do here was actually mix some of that antique wax with some water and paint it all over the paper to make it look older. Now, this is what I did at first, but in a little bit, you're going to see a different technique that I started doing, which made the process a lot faster. But this would work too. So after my paper was all covered in the wax, I went ahead and crinkled it up again to make it that old look. And then I'm going to start rolling it into a scroll. Now this one was a little long, so I did end up ripping it in half. And when I did that, I liked the look of the ripped edge. So on some of them, I did go back and start ripping the edges. Now because I mixed the Waverly wax with water, and you also don't need the Waverly wax. You can just mix it with any brown paint. That would work too. But because this paper was now wet, it was a lot easier for me to rip the edges. So I did this with a couple different sheets of this paper that I had, and then you'll see that I actually grabbed another piece from my stash that looks a little different, has a little bit more color, but I thought that it was kind of old-timey and witchy as well. But all of these projects were so simple and they were so fun to make. And again, I just can't wait to show you how it all came together. Now, once I had all my scrolls done, I just took some twine and went ahead and tied it around my scrolls. Now, I did take the paintbrush that had the wax on it and I dabbed it on the twine to darken it up a little bit to make that look dirty. That you could do, it's just a little detail. Once you put it in the jar, it really doesn't matter, I guess. But, you know, I just love the details. The devil is in the details, as they say. Now here is where I got wise and started using a different method. I picked up this little 2-pack from the Dollar Tree. One is a spray bottle and one is like a lotion dispenser. And so what I did was just take my paintbrush and dip it in some wax and then just put the wax in the bottle. And then I went ahead and poured in some water and then mixed it all together to make a darker mixture. And then I went ahead and put the bottle back together and then just proceeded to spray my paper. Now this worked. It wasn't, so it worked as in it went faster, but it didn't give the same darker look as you can see where versus if I painted it on like the ones that I painted on. But I am going to remedy that in just a minute. But it did go ahead and make, you know, the paper wet, so it was easier for me to rip too. So I just went ahead and made a bunch of scrolls. And here is where I remedied that. I just took my paper towel again and just kind of quickly dabbed over the paper, and that really seemed to work. Now, I wanted some scrolls in the jar, but then I also wanted some scrolls just laying out in my display. So I made a bunch of scrolls, which you'll see, but I just did this for all of my paper, and I think they turned out really fun. So after I had all my scrolls done, I went ahead and stuck them in my jar, and then I replaced the lid back on the jar, and I just think it turned out so cool. Now, I did go a little heavy on the wax on the outside of the jar, so I did want to wipe that off so you could see the scrolls better. But after that, my little jar of scroll of spells, is complete. And this again has got to be one of my favorite projects from today's video. Just look at that detail. Oh, I love it. All right, for my next one, of course, a Witch's Apothecary needs a cauldron. So this is just one of those plastic cauldrons that I had in my stash. I have several cauldrons. It's kind of funny how many cauldrons I own. But I just thought that this just needed to be elevated, needs to be higher end. So first I'm just going to go through and I am just going to drip hot glue all over the side of my cauldron, and I'm going to pay attention to the top and just make sure that my drips just are different lengths and that they just drip down. I mean, you see what I'm doing. This project was really simple as well, and it took, you know, a plastic cauldron from just like a plasticky looking cauldron to a higher end cauldron, and I loved it. So this is how it looked when the hot glue was dry. So I'm just going to go in with that rub and buff again and just put it all over the drips. I did swipe a little bit on the cauldron itself. I also went over the handles on the side of the cauldron, and then I went over the handle on top too to give it that higher end metal effect. And again, this was just so simple, and I just used something I already had in my stash. So it's funny if you just go through your house and kind of find things that you could pass off as old, vintage, things that you don't use anymore, and just dirty them up and just antique them. You'd be surprised with how many things you could come up with from just shopping in your house. Now, I got a lot of things from the thrift store, like I said, but they were thrift store finds, so they weren't even that expensive. So I just decided for now to go ahead and put the rest of that creepy cloth that I was cutting from inside the cauldron. And first I wanted to make this look dingy and dirty, so I did just go ahead and wipe some antique wax all over it. And you can see that I stuffed my cauldron with some grocery bags to raise it up a little bit. And then I'm just going to kind of arrange the creepy cloth so it kind of hangs out a little bit. And you'll see how I styled this at the end, but it came out really spooky. And now I have this really neat cauldron. I just love it. All right, for this next DIY, this one is really cool. So I have this picture from the Dollar Tree. I've had it in my stash for a while, and I like it because we are actually going to use the back. I wanted this to look like a shadow box, so you could really use any kind of like boxed frame. And that top frame was already came off, so that was perfect because we're going to use the inside, this part right here. So the first thing I did was give this entire thing a good coat of black paint, and I also painted the sides. Now I knew that you were not going to be able to see the back, but just in case, I did decide to cover it, and I just used the rest of my paint to paint what I could, and then I just took a piece of black cardstock and covered the back so I didn't have to waste black paint covering it when it wasn't going to be seen anyways. So now I'm going to take that grassy moss and I am going to hot glue it in sections on the inside of my frame. And there really is no rhyme or reason to this. I'm just doing different piles of it. I just wanted it to be just very organic and very natural. You can see that I put some of that moss in the corners of the frame, and now I'm just taking little clumps and just randomly hot gluing them in the middle section of my frame. Now I'm going to take this pack of butterflies that I got from Hobby Lobby, and they were originally $3.49, but I actually got them for 40% off because it actually qualified under the floral sale. And I am just going to take them off. They are picked, so they did have a wire in them, but I didn't need the wire, so I just pulled the wire out, and then I just kind of arranged them inside of my frame. Once I knew where I wanted to put them, I went ahead and glued them down. I thought that this was perfect for a witch's apothecary. When I was kind of researching and Pinteresting ideas for an apothecary, this type of decor came up. So I thought, you know what? Instead of buying something, I'm going to make my own so I could make it my own and just kind of play around with it. And this was another really fun DIY to make. So once I had all of my butterflies down, I took the antique rub and buff and I went around the edges of my frame and a little bit on the insides too, but I really didn't want to take away from the butterflies. So I just, just lightly went over it with the rub and buff. After that, I did feel that my butterflies needed to look a little bit more aged. So I took my paper towel with my antique wax and I just dabbed over my butterflies. And that was pretty much it to this project. It was super, super easy. I really love how it came out and it was really fun to do. For the next DIY, I am going to use this mirror that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. And I think it looks spooky, but of course we are going to take it up a level. And the first thing I did was just go ahead and put rub and buff all over the mirror. And look at the detail that is coming out by using this Rub and Buff. Now, if you do not have Rub and Buff, that's okay. You can just use regular paint and lightly paint over it, and that will also help bring out the detail. Now, I did feel that I wanted to grunge up that mirror part, so I just dipped a paintbrush in my black paint and in the Waverly Antique Wax and just dabbed it all over, and I really do think that that helped make it spooky. For one final touch, I decided to take another one of those spider rings and cut off the ring part, paint the gem black, and then go ahead and put some of that antique gold Rub and Buff on the spider. And then I just simply hot glued it down to the mirror. And I thought that this made it look so neat. So I just kind of played with the positioning a little bit, but once that was on, it looked so cool. And I love how this mirror came out. Look how spooky. I feel like you would definitely see this in a witch's apothecary, right? Now, this last DIY was very last minute, which is why it's taking place in my kitchen. Don't mind the mess. But I have this candle holder that I got from the thrift store, and I thought, how cool would it be if I made it look old with a melted down candle? So I had these black candles. They look purple, but they are black, from Hobby Lobby. So I went ahead and started burning one. Of course, you want to be super, super careful when you do this. But because I took my lighter and started to burn it, this made the wax drip on to the candlestick and made it look really old and aged. And I love how this came out. All right, now that we have finished all of our bewitching DIYs, it's time for the final reveal of my witch apothecary. Oh my goodness, how amazing does this apothecary look? I am so obsessed with it. I know that my original apothecary was more kind of, I don't know, bright and fun, but I was really aiming for that darker, moodier, just grungier look this year, and I really do think I accomplished it. I want to know your thoughts. Let me know what you think about my apothecary. I just think, oh, I'm just so in love with it. You're going to have to let me know if you think you're going to try any of these DIYs or how you usually decorate for Halloween. This is just my absolute favorite time of year, and I'm just loving all of it. So definitely let me know your thoughts. Another big thank you to La Buona Furniture for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget to check out the description box for the link to their website, and don't forget to use my code 15ASH to purchase some really high quality and comfortable furniture. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you can be updated when I upload more videos. Oh, I just can't stop looking at this in my dining room. If you missed any decorating videos from last year, they're actually on my other channel, Life with Ash. They are in my description box, so please feel free to hop on over to that channel and check out how I decorated my whole house for Halloween last year. It turned out really spooky and really cool, and I'm excited to jump right in and continue decorating my house this year for Halloween. So thank you so much for joining me, and until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!